Good morning, everybody. If we'd known the weather was going to break, we would have been outside, but in proper planning. But it's pretty cool to be in this beautiful Richardson room, which was built in 1882. Frank Bellotti watched the construction. He was just a kid. So I want to welcome everybody, and we're going to start off, if those that can stand, if you can stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. We have a treat this morning. We're going to start off with a bagpiper from Quincy High School. A junior from Quincy High School, Isabel Hogan, is going to play the Army song and Tom's alma mater, North Quincy High song. Isabel. Thank you, Isabel. If you could bear with me for a couple of minutes, I'm going to try to recognize the electeds who are with us this morning. And if I miss anyone, wave your hand. But from the city side, we have the Council President Aldebona, Ward 1 Councilor David McCarthy. We have Vice Chair of the School Committee, Frank Santoro. Of course, we have the Speaker of the House, Mr. Mariano, who you'll be hearing from very shortly. We have Clerk Mike Donovan from the other side of the bridge. We have Sal Paterno from Dedham. We have Holbrook Selectman Danny Lee. We have County Commissioner Joe Shea, County Treasurer Michael Bellotti. We have a couple of justices with us, Dan O'Malley and Bob Harnez. And we also have former Ward 5 Council, State Rep, District Attorney, and Congressman Bill Delahunt. I think we've got everybody. Let's hear it for DA Mike Morrissey just came in. Can't miss him. Very poor planning, Michael. You're here as a North grad and you got blue on. Nice going. One of the things that Tom asked me to do was not to do a repeat of the Delahunt dedication. Keep it brief, he said. I know there was a lot to cover there, guy your age, Congressman. It's nice to see Trav here. Senate President Travellini, nice to see you. So we've got a couple of speakers before we hear from our guest of honor this morning, but just to set the stage a little bit, I'm going to read what's on the plaque at the Commonwealth of Massachusetts flag at Creedon Field, which was dedicated a number of years ago. Tom Kiley graduated from North Quincy High School in 1964, where he excelled on the field and in the classroom. A member of the National Honor Society and President of Student Council, he was also quarterback of the football team, co-captain and center for the basketball team, and catcher for the baseball team. He went on to attend Harvard University as a National Merit Scholar, graduating with honors in 1968, and following graduation, he enlisted in the United States Army and served with the 9th Infantry in Vietnam. He was critically wounded during a combat mission in the Mekong Delta. He came back and graduated from Boston University Law School, and certainly is an accomplished attorney, one of the preeminent attorneys, I would say, in Massachusetts and beyond. Tom served as first Assistant General to the great Frank Bellotti the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and has argued before the United States Supreme Court in defense of veterans' preference in Massachusetts for state hiring. And he was successful. A lot of young veterans are working in police and fire departments all over the state because of Tom Kiley. He's been a partner in private practices. He's had offices in Quincy and Boston since 1987 as a fellow of the American College of Trial Attorneys. Tom Kiley has never forgotten his roots and is truly a friend to all. First one up I'd like to have is Leo Martin. Leo is the owner of the building across the street at the corner of Temple Street and Coddington Street and Washington Street. I guess it comes into three streets here at the intersection. And that building holds 48 units of veterans housing. So when Leo reached out and said, you know, I'd like to come up with a name for it, do you have any historic names? I said, well, I think we should really zero in on perhaps a veteran from Quincy. And so I thank Leo. It's his building. He didn't have to do this. He did accept some money for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, so we had a little leverage with him to do this project. But I'd like to have Leo Martin come up and say a couple of words.
Thanks all for attending, appropriately the day after Veterans Day. I want to congratulate Tom Kiley and his family and his service to the country. This project took a year over the original time schedule due to COVID and many other factors out of our control. I want to thank the following people for their time and patience. Mayor Tom Koch and his administration, Quincy Affordable Housing Trust, and the VASH program, Veterans Assistant Housing. Also, I'd like to thank the people that work with us, the Martin Realty Gang, the office staff, Deborah Keenan, Melissa Lyons, Lynn Doucette, and our key field people, Terrence McCarthy, and my son, Mike Martin. I hope it is a comfort to us all that we're now housing 48 disabled and homeless veterans. I spoke to one of the veterans who told me he slept in a car in the woods and shelter for the last 8 years. That's a long time without having a roof over your head. Their problems will continue, and hopefully with help and kindness, their difficult road will lighten. Thank you very much. One last thing. We promised the mayor and Jim Fatsi a clock. It's not there, but here's a picture from the factory, and it is going up.
I've seen pictures before. We'll believe it when it's up there, Leo. I also want to recognize the District Attorney Joe Early, Western Massachusetts, good man. Middle Massachusetts, I guess. This time, Tom Fabrizio was director of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and I know he wanted to acknowledge some of the members of the fund.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, the weatherman the city uses must be a North Quincy High graduate. I'm sorry. First of all, Mr. Kiley, thank you for your service. Is that, sir? We won. Not my years, but that's okay. I didn't play either. But thank you, Mr. Kiley, for your service. The Affordable Housing Trust has created over 560 affordable units. Most memorable is the building that we dedicate today because of the people it will serve. So at this time, I'd like to introduce the members of the committee that were instrumental in putting this together. First, the chairman, Jim Fatsi, Reverend Sheldon Bennett, Judy Farmer, former City Councilor Margaret LaForest, former City Councilor and now Judge Brian Palmucci, former City Councilor Mike McFarland. I see a trend here with these former City Council people, which I personally like, and I'm certainly glad that the mayor likes former City Councils too. Donna Rackerman, Derek Adamek, and from the Planning Department, very instrumental to all the help they give us, Sean Glennon, Sherry Zhu, Paul Gould, and attorney John Bacon. We've all been very, very proud to be part of this project, and would like to thank Mayor Koch, Mr. Martin, and congratulations again to Tom Kiley. Thank you.
Tom couldn't get into North Quincy High, so he attended Quincy High. Next 6 years of his life. Next up, our keynote speaker here today, before we hear from the honoree, Speaker of the House, Ron Mariano. Ron Mariano served on the Quincy School Committee, obviously state representative for many years from Quincy Point, his native neighborhood. Quincy High guy, proud Quincy High guy. The first Speaker of the House from Quincy since John Hancock. Prior to that, it was Colonel John Quincy, who Quincy is named for. So pretty long run in between. But what an honor to have Speaker of the House in the great city of Presidents. He's a dear friend of Tom's. He's a dear friend of this city, particularly the school system. He's been remarkable. He started as a teacher, of course, and never forgot his love for education. He's been a great partner in all that's going on in this great city. Speaker Mariano.
Thank you, Mayor. I am truly honored to be here and be able to speak to you today about someone who I have the utmost respect for. And it is fitting that we're here the day after Veterans Day to honor one of Quincy's most outstanding veterans. For those of you who have political aspirations and political desires, you could do no worse than follow the two guys behind me, because they're the two that I followed. I grew up in Quincy Point. I didn't get out of the point very often. My mother told me that if we went beyond Quincy Center, we'd fall off the edge of the earth. And there was nothing beyond Quincy Center except Bob and Ray's and Coleman's. Those are the old, that's where you bought your sneakers, Tom. So I didn't know Tom Kiley growing up, but as we entered middle school and the middle school started to compete and you started to see the sports activities in the city, you quickly came aware of Tom Kiley. And then in 1964, which was when we had the Thanksgiving football game as opposed to 1963, Tom ruined a lot of Quincy High Thanksgiving dinners on a questionable call. I'm not here to make a judgment. I do know, though, if the rules were in place now, it would have been reviewed upstairs. And they would have said that maybe Bill Curran was in front of you. But anyway, I'm not here to rehash that. And there's no hard feelings, Tom. And you're right, you did win. It's in the books. I read it. I looked it up on the internet to make sure it hadn't changed. And it hadn't. It's still 14-10. But I have another personal side of this that's kind of interesting. I was on the school committee, and I loved being on the school committee. I was on the school committee with a great North Quincy High grad in Frank Santoro. And we had a lot of fun, and we did a lot of good things. The mayor at the time decided he was going to shut the stadium right around Thanksgiving time because the benches were being condemned. I don't know how you condemn a bench, but he was going to do it. So Frank and I got this great idea that we're going to put in all new benches. We're going to sell benches, aluminum benches, and we went out and enlisted a North Quincy guy and a Quincy guy to partner with us in raising the money to put new benches in the Veterans Memorial Stadium, which turns out to be a violation of every campaign law in the history of Massachusetts. And we get a call from Tom Kiley. I should say Frank got the call. And Frank called me and says, I think we got to reconsider how we're doing this. What we're doing may be illegal. And I see Barry. Barry was one of the folks we enlisted. So we quickly scrubbed our plans, and Tom created a 501c3 for us, and we were able to raise the money legally and get the benches done. So now when you go to Thanksgiving games and any other event at the stadium, and you plank your rear end on one of those aluminum benches, it's because of because of Tom keeping us out of jail that we were able to get it done. But that was just one of the instances where he reaches out to people to help. To help. It wasn't his fight, but it was good for the city, it was good for the kids. So he got involved and took care of it. Then I get into this business, which is another crazy business, following the lead of Frank and others who came before me. And I found once I got elected and was serving in the State House, I became important because I was from Quincy and I might know Tom Kiley. And every time there was, and I think a lot of people use this line, but every time there was a scandal in the paper, you know, Kiley's name was there as someone representing someone trying to help. And so I began to see the value of that. People would seek me out, seek my advice. You think Tom Kiley would take this? And of course I'd opine, of course he will. I'll call him for you. And prevail upon Tom time after time after time. I do remember sending one friend of mine to him, and one of the great lines, he was kind of a pest. He would call Tom constantly to get updates on what was going on, what does he think is going to happen, should he testify, should he not testify, who's going to come forward. And Tom had a meeting in the mayor's office, and I was ringing the bell for the Salvation Army, trying to solicit donations. And he came out of the meeting and he came up to me and he said, listen, I'll put $20 in that tin if you promise me you can get Mike to stop calling me. And I couldn't do it. But he put $20 in anyway. That's the type of guy Tom Kiley is. He took every case. He worked his hardest to the folks he was representing. He's been extremely generous to any activity that you could generate in the city of Quincy, especially anything for kids. I see Neil here in the front row, who I tried to make into a basketball player, unsuccessfully. But that's not unusual. There were a lot of kids that were in that category, Neil, so don't feel bad. I made a lot of basketball players, football players. So it's my contribution to Quincy athletics. But I am really, truly honored to be here because there isn't anyone I have more admiration for personally. You know, as a contemporary of Tom's, and I know what he went through, and I know all of us have an understanding of the difficulties that you have going through something as horrific as what he went through. But he's here every day to contribute and ask for nothing. That's sort of the bright star that shines. He asks for nothing. Amazing individual. This is just a small honor. Leo, I personally think, throw the clock out, just get a bigger sign. And I want the sign at the top. It should come up Connington Street, so you have to see it. There's no other way to avoid it. I've scouted this out, you know, this is important to me. We're not going to let you just bury the sign. So. But it is truly an honor, and I know he's going to try and articulate his feelings, which will be difficult, because he's shunned the limelight. He's shunned the limelight, yet you heard the things that he's done. Argued before the Supreme Court for veterans' preference. It's amazing, and it really is amazing, and to win it and then receive very, very little recognition for it. But I did Google some things, and I didn't know this, Tom, and I'm going to bring this up because I just think it's kind of goofy. Okay, that's right. You get the mic after me. I gotta. There's such a thing as Super 100 lawyers, and Tom's been a member since 2002. Super 100 lawyers, and I don't know exactly what that means. Do you get a cape with that? Is it? Oh, there's always a catch. But I was not surprised when I saw that. And I said, I think you could get that down into Super 10 or Super single digits, because there is, in my mind, not a better attorney. There isn't anyone I would want representing me in court other than Tom Kiley. I do think that he is one of a kind. And in my business, the appreciation is universal. You know, Trav is here, former Senate President. Tom Kiley took Trav in and made him his ward to make sure that he stayed out of trouble as a private. I know, it's a full-time job. Full-time job. But, so again, not to repeat myself, I just wanted to say I am honored to be here and thrilled that I was able to say a few words about someone I have the utmost respect for, someone who I think is a special citizen of Quincy, and he is what makes Quincy special. He is the type of person who stayed here. I'm sure he had the opportunity to leave. I'm sure he made enough money to be able to afford a cottage somewhere else. But he stayed in Quincy because this is his home. This is where his friends are, and his friends are here. And this is where his mentor stayed. So with that, I wanted to just say congratulations, Tom, and thank you for everything you do, not just for me, but for everybody in the city of Quincy.
Before we bring the honored guest up, there's a couple of things I'd like to say. The speaker was absolutely correct. So many of us in this business call Tom for advice, for guidance. Before I was mayor, it was the first time in my life I had to go for a deposition, and Tom coached me and said, don't make the mistake that everybody makes and think you can explain. Just answer the question and shut up, you know. And it was very good, sage advice. After I became mayor, Tom was one of the attorneys that we hired in dealing with the whole master plan with the development of the downtown, exciting times. To this day, I'll never say a bad word about the master developer we fired, Streetworks, but they helped us get where we were. But we were meeting every week, these team meetings, lawyers, financial advisors, real estate folks, city folks, and I think it might have been in the men's room, Tom. Perhaps we were side by side at the urinal, and he says, you know, this isn't going to work. It's like, just shot me in the heart, you know. He said, no, this is a good exercise. You'll end up with other developers, but these guys aren't financed enough to do it. So Tom was the only one that told me that. That sage advice was straight with me, to say, look, you keep doing what you're doing, and we'll help you get there. But these aren't going to be the guys doing the development. That's Tom Kiley. Straight shooter, remarkable individual, and brilliant. And I want to give him a presentation. A number of years ago, we dedicated the John Adams statue at the Hancock Adams Common. And Tom literally walks in the footsteps of John Adams in that neighborhood, walking the streets of his neighborhood in the city. But also, John Adams was a preeminent attorney of his time. I would suggest Tom Kiley is a preeminent attorney of his time, this time. And the maquette of the statue has been given out to David McCullough, to Congressman Lynch, to Ben Adams, one of the descendants of the Adams family. And today, I'm proud to present the John Adams maquette to Tom Kiley.
do some lifting.
You're up, stay up.
Oh, I'm staying up.
That was the lead in, he didn't catch it.
I'm a little slow.
It's been driving
Okay.
me crazy.
For those of you who don't know, Sarah takes care of me. My daughter Sarah, my son Neil. My oldest son is smart enough to be going down to watch Alabama and Mississippi today. It will be more entertaining. Kathy, my wife, is sitting here, is very worried about what I'm going to say, with good cause. My grandchildren in the front row, Ronan, Mia, and Nicole sitting behind them. You don't do anything in life without family. Quincy is my family. I am a son of Quincy. We did win the Thanksgiving game. Billy Curran did have the brains to lateral the ball to me when he couldn't get through the line. He was the best player on the field. But Franny Lacy, who's here today, bailed us out before Bill did in that game. Won a lot of games, lost a lot of games. I've won a lot of cases. I've lost a lot of cases. A lawyer who doesn't try, a lawyer who says that they've never lost a case, realistically hasn't tried many cases. I have had very little difficulty in making my arguments to the court because I believe in them. And I believe in them because I work hard at them. And very often I'm going back to John Adams, believe it or not, to learn what the state constitution that he wrote is all about. I've had some difficulty emotionally in two cases in particular. One of them was the veterans preference case. And in that case, we lost in what was then a 3-judge district court. When the lawyer, I didn't handle that. When the lawyers who handled it came back to the office, they got into the elevator with Frank and with me, and they were happy that they had lost. And Frank, when we went upstairs, said to me, Tom, I want you to take that case, and I want you to win it. And we did. We took it to the U.S. Supreme Court. The governor objected, tried to prevent us from going there. We won that battle. But when I stood in the dock in the United States Supreme Court, there was the basic contention was that our draft system, our military service was discriminatory. So to correct one thing that the mayor said, I didn't enlist, I was drafted. And I tried to tell people ever since that I played a little football at Harvard, which is true, and that I was drafted, which is true, but nobody ever believes I played in the NFL. But I've tried. When I stood in that well, and I was being asked about whether the law discriminated against women, I had a very difficult time answering the question. My father and mother were in the back of the courtroom. My father was a wounded veteran from World War II. Up there at the benches outside of Veterans Stadium, there's one that says Brothers in Arms. It's my father, his two brothers, all of whom were in combat. Joe and my father in World War II, and Paul in the Korean War. I cannot conceive that somebody would think they're being discriminated against by not being put in harm's way and drafted and sent to war. I'm not a military guy. I cringe when the planes fly over at Gillette when everybody else is cheering. I have the shivers when certain helicopter blades go by. I can't think that somehow war is glorious. I can't think that there aren't better ways to resolve things than battle. The other time I had difficulty emotionally arguing a case was at the Quincy Housing Authority, where I was advocating for a North Quincy High class of '64 classmate, Vietnam veteran, who had troubles. And the association, the Quincy Housing Authority, was holding hearings to remove him. And I remember being at that table with him and saying, not in my city, not in my city. I may not be a military man, but I know that veterans are due honor. I owe my life to veterans, not just because my father wouldn't have been there and I wouldn't have been there if he hadn't been treated after he was gunshot in Okinawa, but every person that treated me after I got shot is now a veteran. Everybody who has succeeded, meaning got out of wartime alive, and therefore is a veteran, sacrificed time, sacrificed parts of their bodies. Every one of them sacrificed. Every one of them is due a place of honor at our tables, in our homes, in our communities. Now, I asked the speaker to be the speaker, in part because the state of Massachusetts, led by the speaker and the House, which is the purse watcher, appropriates millions of dollars every year to homeless shelters in Massachusetts. At Arbella Insurance, where Frank founded it, and I've been lucky to serve for many years, we made a big deal one year about our $100,000 contribution to the New England Center for what was then called Homeless Veterans. It's now called the New England Center and Home for Veterans, and it has 97 permanent housing units for veterans. The money, our $100,000 for that venture, Bella's money, was a, I almost said something you wouldn't have liked. It was a hole in the snow compared to what it is, that the state representatives put up for it. And I mention Arbella, not just because Frank founded it, but because we're going to have a brunch after this, and I understand the mayor will put the arm on for the Affordable Housing Trust. But I want you to know, Tom, that Arbella is going to pick up that to make a contribution to you to cover that. Because again, part of our mission at Arbella the Good, plug, part of our mission at Arbella the Good is to do good things for people, and veterans are among them. Leo, I told you before, the building will always be Leo Martin's building to me, but I'm going to point to the sign when I go by it. When the mayor told me that he was going to do this, I told him, geez, I'm not dying, I'm not dead, this is not the time. But when I heard that bagpiper going down the aisle, playing the North Quincy song, I wondered whether this was my way. Thank you all for being here. I learned my lessons along the way well. I'd like to introduce my mentor, hired me out of law school Frank Bellotti just to say a few words. Frank.
I'm not that tall. You know, I wasn't going to speak because I've spoken so many times in so many places. But I couldn't let this affair or this moment pass without telling you that the person you just listened to is probably the smartest man I've ever known. He's made me look good, for so many years. But he never, in all the years that I've known him, and he's come along with me, working in the office and becoming the first assistant and making me look good for God knows how many years. But it's very difficult for me to express how I feel about Tom. This function today is important. And we have a wonderful mayor who spoke, and someone that I've known and admired for so many years, Speaker Mariano. But it's much more than that. It's very personal to me, because I've always believed that politicians look good or bad depending upon the people that work with them. And I may not be the brightest guy in the world, but I really know how to pick people. And I picked Tom, I think, before he even passed the bar, right, Tom? And I've never, ever regretted it. And I'm probably the oldest veteran in the room. I'm quite sure I am. But in all the years that I've known Tom, he's never, ever once talked about his service and being a veteran. So I had to just get up here for a moment and express to you how deeply I feel about Tom, what he's accomplished, and the fact that I could never survive as Attorney General for 12 years without Tom. So let's give him one last hand and send him off as one of the great veterans of all time.